Okay, I'm going to spend the next few minutes just talking about something that every team already does all of the time. This is a good example of how AMBIT is really an approach of trying to kind of make small adjustments to very ordinary processes to increase the capacity for a team to do these things without losing its balance. The topic is titled Thinking Together. So this is an approach to how we invite members of a team to have conversations with each other where one member of the team is asking for some kind of help from the other member of the team. So absolutely understandably, this is a technique that has been developed looking at the left-hand quadrant of our AMBIT wheel, the working with your team. And you'll remember perhaps that around the outside of the AMBIT wheel there's a series of elements of what we call our principled stance, a way of keeping your balance in work that constantly pulls us out of balance. And in this quadrant, the tension is between these two aspects of our practice. We want to create an individual key working relationship, a relationship where a worker and a young person or client really feel that there is some kind of strong relationship of help that develops between them, that is quite specific and individual. Now, the risk in creating such strong relationships with our clients is that actually our clients can invite us to, if you like, lose sight of the wider goals, to start to, if you like, dangerously collude with quite risky behaviours, or to, if you like, upregulate our kind of ability to kind of notice when things are getting risky. We may start to feel maybe it's normal for these very extraordinary or risky practices to happen in this particular client group, so that we can lose our balance. Clients will often invite us into less than helpful relationships. So getting intense, strong relationships of help going is essential, because that's where epistemic trust is developed, and that's where actually help can start to be delivered, but it's also fraught with risk. So AMBIT suggests that as much effort as we put into creating these individual relationships, we need to put into what we call remaining well connected to the team, the creation of relationships with our teammates that are deep and enduring and are kind of awake and aware and alive. And thinking together is one of the ways that we invite teams to create, if you like, their own culture of how we look after each other's needs as workers, in order that we can also make these strong relationships. An analogy is how it works on a mountain. A climber here could have all of the most incredible skills of how to place his or her ice axe and their crampons, how to balance, how to get past tricky obstacles on this dangerous looking place. But if they don't also have a relationship of help with the teammate who's holding their rope, who might notice that if they only stepped 2 or 3 meters to the left, they would avoid some terrible, dangerous overhang that they couldn't see because they're in the middle of the place. If they don't also attend to that relationship, they're in great danger. So it's that, if you like, emphasis on who's holding your rope and how do we discipline each other to make sure that when you need me to pay a little bit of rope out, I can let you go. But when I need you to notice, or you need me to notice that I need to hold tight, that will be communicated, so that we're never left alone in this intense face-to-face work that we engage in. Another way of looking at that, to think of another very inhospitable environment, is the deep sea diver, who's in this incredibly pressurized, tricky environment, an environment for us that is one where our own mentalizing is constantly under threat because of the risks and the anxieties that this work inevitably makes us feel. You should feel anxious as a worker doing this work, but not so anxious that you are unable to manage that anxiety. And it's, if you like, the boat on the surface that can pipe down, in this case, oxygen, but in our case, if you like, thoughtfulness, mentalizing, the ability to make sense of where you are. It's that relationship that thinking together is all about. So you'll already have done the exercise which we call the past outwards discussion, where we really thought about the impact of anxiety, stress, strong feelings, anger, hatred, fear, the impact of those strong emotions on our capacity to tell a story or to hear a story. And thinking together uses the same understanding to try to develop a way of understanding what it's like to be the worker who's in the middle of that pond, where the water is completely chaotic, it's difficult to mentalize, and how I, on the bank, if you like, not in the middle, could get something useful back to help my colleague. And we have developed what some people call a 4-step dance. There are 4 stages to this conversation that if we really develop a discipline, a culture in our team of holding each other to these steps, it's a little bit like they light up the landing strip for an aeroplane. It's less likely that our conversations are just unhelpful or even worse, end up upsetting or making our colleagues feel risky. So here's the first step in this conversation, and we call it marking the task. This is most often the stage that in most ordinary help-seeking conversations we miss out. I just start telling you my problem. I just pour it out. It's in my head and it comes out of my mouth, and you sit and you nod and you look very sensitive and you're listening hard. But inside of your head, as a helper, you may be thinking, well, why is he telling me this? What does he actually want me to do? Does he want me to solve the problem, to help him think about the problem? It's unclear. So marking the task is a way of saying, stop. Before you even tell me all of the story and the details, let's clarify what we're actually about here. The first thing that people do in marking the task is they actually might want to use the phrase, I want to think together. That is like, if you like, a little sign, like a bell that we ring in our team that says, oh, we're going to involve ourselves in this 4-step dance. This is a serious work conversation, not just passing the time over the water cooler or having a chat in the corridor. This is a work thing. The second point about marking the task is that if I am trying to be helpful to you and you're asking me for a problem, what I do in saying, let's mark the task, is 2 things. Number 1, I am actually insisting that you, as my colleague, mentalize yourself. Why am I coming to this person and asking for help? What do I want from them? And immediately in stopping to think about the why am I doing this, I have to create a more mentalizing state in my mind than just pouring the situation out. The second thing that we do in marking the task is that me as a potential helper, it's much easier for me to listen to the story that you're about to tell me if I've already got a frame in my mind established that actually there's a point to my listening. I'm listening with a very specific task in mind. And it's incredibly easy in ordinary help-seeking conversations for this step to be missed out completely. And it's tempting to sort of let it go and just be nice and nod. So we're kick-starting our mentalizing, we're defining what the task is, and I, as a helper, also need to be more concrete as well, saying, is this a task that I think I can help you with in the time that I have available? This is an approach to help-seeking conversations that is rooted in real life. We may only have 10 minutes. We may have 15 minutes. You can do this over an hour if you have that luxury, but you can squeeze it into a real period of time. And it's better that that is explicit and agreed between us before we start, than hidden in my mind as a possible helper that I then spring on you after 5 minutes that actually I have to go now. So marking the task is the first step. Once we've marked a task and I'm clear as a helper that I understand what you're asking me for, you want me to think about your risk plan given something that's happened that has got you worried, or you want me just to help you feel less furious about a situation so that you can start to think again, or you want me to help you come up with 2 new ideas about what you could do in the next session because you feel that things are just getting a bit chaotic. It doesn't matter what the task is, as long as I've got an idea in my mind, I can listen to you tell the story, stating the case with some clarity. And more than that, I can hold the boundaries. I can hold the boundaries of your telling of the story. So I can, if you like, I'm given permission to say, can you stop here? Are these the bones of the story that I need to hear to help you? Or are we getting into a kind of storytelling, which you may remember from earlier videos could be a little bit what we call the pretend mode, this kind of waffle that doesn't quite get to the reality. So these first 2 stages are, if you like, quite tough. There's a cruel to be kind kind of element to this. I won't let you start until I'm clear about the task. And then when you are telling the story, stating the case, I might kind of bring you in and say, look, you know, actually we've got a task here. I'm not sure that hearing about the dog or the aunt is helping me think about risk, etc. You can do that as long as both of you have an understanding about what this kind of ritualized way of having a conversation actually entails, because we will both know that there's a 3rd step, which we call mentalizing the moment. And at this stage of the conversation, I might want to mark this as a helper quite clearly. I might want to say, okay, you've stated that the story, I've got an understanding, I think. Can we just stop and kind of mentalize a bit? And I might try to change my whole posture to sort of imitate what we look like when we're mentalizing, which is a slightly calmer state of mind, where we're able to be a bit more imaginative. And for me as a helper, trying to help you, there's a very important rule, which is that when I'm mentalizing the moment, first I mentalize you, the worker, not the client, not the client's family, not the other professional network, because they're not here, you are here. So my first effort, if you remember that past outwards discussion, is that in my telling of my understanding, I'm hoping that you as my colleague will feel, okay, he's heard me. I feel understood. I feel that all these feelings and these anxieties or this anger or this fear is at least understandable to somebody else. I really need you to feel I've got you. So where we have these very tough beginnings, the marking the task, the stating the case, the mentalizing the moment is a moment where we act as if maybe there's no end to this conversation, and we can let our minds be a little bit more kind of exploratory. And I start by trying to mentalize you, my colleague, who's come with this problem. Once there's some attunement, and if this is a team member that I know very well, it may not take very long. I might be able to say, look, you know, I know you don't normally get as worried about this, so there's something that's important. And it might only take that for them to feel, okay, I'm recognized. And then we might then together go on to mentalize the other parties, the parents, the client, the other members of the professional network, whoever needs to be thought about. As the helper, I've contracted in to this very disciplined way of helping, so it's my responsibility to make sure that given the time we've got, we get to the 4th step, the return to purpose. The purpose is, what was the task that you think you needed help with? To have some extra thoughts about a risk plan, to feel differently at the end of our conversation than you did at the beginning so that you can get back to work, to have a few new ideas. It doesn't matter what the task is. It's my responsibility as the helper to make sure that we get back to that. And I might invite you, as my colleague who's asked for help, whether any of our reflections and my attempt to sort of tell back the story in a way that you feel I've understood a bit, whether you have any thoughts about this first, but it might be that then I am invited to sort of share with you some thoughts about, what might be helpful. So the return to purpose, if you like, is an attempt to kind of bring this clinical kind of working conversation to an end with something that is actually kind of digestible and portable for you as my colleague, to wrap it up in a way that is, feels helpful. So that's the 4 steps that we invite you to engage in. And we could summarize that in these ways. Marking the task is me clarifying that I'm, as a helper, that I'm sure I've understood what you are wanting, and you having to mentalize yourself so that you've actually thought about that. Stating the case, I'm holding you to what's relevant, and we're keeping this, if you like, to the bones of the story and not the whole kind of 7 episodes. Mentalizing the moment, I'm starting with your thoughts and feelings as my colleague coming for help, and then together we might try to mentalize around the problem in this kind of curious, exploratory, not certain, allowing our not knowing to let our minds kind of look for new understandings. And then the return to purpose, if you like, the wrapping up of something that is actually feels digestible and portable. Thank you.